everyone. My name is Sarah Lynne Bowman from the Transformative Play Initiative at the Department of Game Design at Uppsala University. This is part 4 of our 5-part series, and today we're going to be discussing some strategies for after the game integration and processing. All right, so after the game, there are many strategies, and we're going to go through them very fast, but hopefully you'll get an idea of the large range of things that you can take part in that can help you and to help support your players in this processing and reflection we've been talking about, which is really the key part of transformative play, but also just quite helpful in general when phasing out of a game experience. So the first thing is de-rolling, and this is a ritual activity that marks the shift back to the daily frame of life and identity. So it could be the removal of costumes. It could be a player stating something like, I was Hathor, that was my character's name, but I am now Linda. And often players will be asked to share one thing they would like to take with them about the session and one thing they would like to leave behind. And it could be anything. It could be about their character or the dynamics happening or, funny moment, whatever. And then sometimes it's helpful to reframe the perspective, going from this first person perspective as of I to third person. So saying Hathor, the character, did X rather than I did X. Can be difficult. There's some slippage that can happen there, but it can help provide a little bit of what we call role distancing. Then there's debriefing, processing emotions and experiences in a serious manner. These can be structured or unstructured, meaning that you might have a structured debrief where a facilitator asks very specific questions and everybody gets a certain amount of time to share, and then it's over. Or it could be unstructured. It could just be a conversation. But it's distinct from what we call a war story, because war stories are generally when we narrativize the play experience to other people, and they're often told in a more lighthearted or humorous tone. And this is a way for us to actually both connect with our game experience, but also roll distance a little bit. So maybe something was super intense when it happened and really like traumatic for the character, but somebody during a war story is telling it in this really lighthearted and funny way. This can help with de-rolling. It can also help with community building. People like to tell these stories with each other, but it's not always so good with the deeper processing. And that's where debriefing comes into play, because that's a much more serious form of processing. So after the game, we're going to go through a bunch of these types of processing and integration activities. Integration is a way for us to take these game experiences and either transmute them into something else or bring them into our sense of self in some way. And this is very important if we're thinking about transformative games. So there's creative expression. Some players choose to integrate their experiences by creating new works of art. That can include journaling, studio art, performance art, game design, fiction writing, storytelling. It could be a co-creative thing that they do with other players as well. It's really common, for example, for people to narrativize the parts of their LARP experience, for example, and share it with the group. These can be group experiences or they can be very individualized. It's really up to the person. Intellectual analysis. So players may also engage in cognitive processing, where they seek to analyze their experiences on an intellectual level. And this can include contextualization, meaning thinking about what other kinds of things were happening that are related to this topic, whether it's theories or contexts, social contexts within which it was taking place. Could be researching or reframing experiences with new ways of thinking about them, documentation, theorizing, applying existing theoretical lenses to an experience. This is quite common in academia. And then again, just reflection is an intellectual process. There's emotional processing. So participants often find it valuable to be able to emotionally process their experiences either individually, one-on-one with people, or in a group setting. So again, debriefing, this can be a form to reduce shame and process bleed. So if you're having an intense experience, being able to verbalize it with other people can actually help it feel less shameful. It can help with one's ego development, their evolution of self. It can be paired with individual or group therapy. It's a way to validate our experiences by verbalizing them, to identify and acknowledge any needs or fears or desires that arose. Identifying and acknowledging any shadow aspects. So parts of our consciousness that we often prefer not to look at, or that scare us, that might have arisen. It's a way for us to process those things. This is extremely important for people who play villainous characters, or are playing out things that they wouldn't normally identify with their own sense of self. And again, it can create a little bit of a distancing between one's identity from these undesirable traits or behaviors that were explored in the character. Some people just really need to return to daily life in some sort of ritualized way. So on a psychological level, sometimes a variety of practices can be useful in helping people transition from the headspace of the game frame back to the frame of their daily lives and daily identities. So again, de-rolling, working to manage bleed, narrativizing role-playing experiences. Again, creating this narrative helps build distance. Distilling core lessons or takeaways. This can be super helpful. Applying the experiences of the game or any skills that were learned in other contexts. That way it's not bounded in the frame of the game, but actually being used in other spaces. Engaging in self-care and grounding practices. Those can look different for different kinds of people. Some people may need to sleep for 3 days. Other people may need to, go for a run, or, watch a television show or whatever. It's individualized, but it can be quite important. And basically, we're helping people transition between different frames of reality, and we're helping them incorporate any personality traits or behaviors that they might want to bring into life. And that's where the transformation part comes in. Then there's interpersonal processing. Again, this is similar to emotional processing, but social connections can be really important after a role-playing experience. It helps people transition from the social frames of the game to off-game interpersonal dynamics. So players maybe have played one type of relationship in game, and then they need to transition out into another type of relationship outside of the game. And this can include connecting with co-players in some sort of way, reestablishing previous social connections people have had, and just kind of remembering what their dynamic was like before. It could mean renegotiating relationship dynamics, like maybe now things are different after the game. Maybe people have a different kind of relationship that needs to be discussed and figured out. Even just sharing role-playing experiences with others. We talked about these war stories that can be very bonding for communities. If people consent to having a war story told to them, which is important. A lot of people really enjoy telling their war stories, but the people on the other end might not have opted into that. So it's something to think about. And then groups may even engage in reunion activities. And these can look like, everybody's at the same convention and they decide to host a party that's themed based on that LARP that they went to. Or, just getting together, maybe a year after a certain event and having a conversation about it, that sort of thing. So then there's just more general community building. So some players will take the lessons they learned in these groups further and they decide to create or transform the communities around them. This can include networking, planning other events, collaborating on new projects, creating new social systems, so new ways to interact, sharing resources and knowledge, which is kind of what I'm doing with you right now, creating implicit and explicit social contracts, engaging in related subcultural activities, so things that might be adjacent to role-playing, and then evolving or innovating existing social structures. So perhaps learning what we learned about social dynamics within play and applying it to social environments outside of play. And then another common concept that I wanted to mention is aftercare. This is providing support and care for participants after a game. And it can be especially important when players have engaged in any kind of in-game antagonism or oppression, or perhaps they've experienced an in-game, experience of grief. It's kind to do for anyone in the community. So, perhaps you played in a dynamic that was particularly contentious between two characters, and off game, it's important to provide care to that person that you maybe you were pressing in that particular game. But really, it is a kind thing to provide care to anyone in the community if your time and energy allows. And people need to manage that themselves and figure out themselves if they're open to helping others. But oftentimes people struggle with what we call post-LARP blues or post-LARP depression. People can feel very deflated after a game experience, after feeling very expanded by being part of this community and having these really intense experiences. And so people can find returning to life disorienting or lonely, or it can trigger mental health challenges. So sometimes it's good just to check in with others and seeing how they're doing. And that was part 4 of our safety and role-playing games videos. Please stick around for part 5, where we will be talking about some ways to cultivate safer communities in general. Thank you for listening.